And Nick, you said it. The committee takes a long look, and I'm not saying they're world beaters.
Okay.
But can we give Philadelphia a little more respect?
Why?
Well, because they beat the Green Bay Packers, who are on your third row. And I'm not saying they're better than Packers, because Packers are going to the Super Bowl.
The Patriots are off the tiers. They beat the Bengals.
They beat New Orleans a week after the Saints. Those stinky Saints hammered the Dallas Cowboys by 25 points in Jerry World. All right? And they lost to Atlanta, which we think is a good team, by a point. And then Tampa Bay had its way with them.
Yeah.
They were missing their two Pro Bowl level receivers, their best offensive linemen. All right? So again, they should be up.
It's so funny that Nick hems and haws at that when literally he made those excuses for the Dallas Cowboys. He hems and haws and was like, well, there's the injuries with so-and-so and this and that, and yet the Eagles have injuries, and it's, oh, please. And yeah, their defense was bad because it was over 100 degrees. Their offense couldn't do anything, so there was multiple 3-and-outs, and the defense was gassed. That's all they kept saying on the broadcast. Tom Brady kept saying it. The defense was gassed. They had nothing left. There was 3-and-outs, and then the muff punt. Those things stacked on stacked on stacked. So it's just really funny that Nick wants to just keep being just honestly, like, it's you guys all like, you know what? Let me just see what else Brou has to say about this. Let's get to it.
Can I see the tiers again?
Yeah.
They should be at least with the Cowboys and Bears and that all that. If not ahead of them, if not on that next tier. I'm telling. Look, Nick, they play Cleveland and the Giants next. They could easily be 4-2, feeling good about themselves, right the ship. They got one of the best running backs in the league. We know that. Jalen Hurts needs to get it together, but they should be higher.
Jalen Hurts needs to get it together. Can I just ask you one quick question?
Their combined teams, they've beaten 5-5. The Cowboys, since you're in love with Dallas, their combined teams, they've beaten 6-9.
Okay.
I rest my case.
Okay. Can I ask you a quick question, bro?
Yep. Accurate.
If the Eagles lose as 9-point favorites to the Browns, do you think it's on the board that Sirianni gets pitched? I'm just curious.
I mean, if that happens, we'll see.
Okay,
I'm not into the hypotheticals.
What tier is he on? The hot seat tier?
Well,
you, sir.
The name is fine. The name is fine. I'll give you that. You saved the little face with the nice little name.
Yeah.
But they should be higher as far as how good they are.
They're still in the supernatural funk, and you know it. Next.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's absurd to think that the Miami Dolphins, the New York Giants, I mean, it's just, and that's why I agree with Nick too. And I said this kind of in the previous video when I did the whole thing, but I didn't have Brou's whole thing. But again, like, the Eagles beat the Packers. They nearly beat the Falcons. I mean, that was a fluke loss, quite frankly, with the drop pass. I mean, that's just an unfortunate circumstance, obviously, but they did lose, of course. And then, yeah, they absolutely got beat good by the Buccaneers. It's just, but again, they weren't 100% healthy. That's obvious. And they beat the Saints. And I love, it's just funny to me. I mean, it really is, just the inconsistencies. Because, again, you have Dallas beating the Giants. Wow, that is just so wildly impressive. They beat the Browns, who are facing elimination, who are just awful, also according to Nick. And they beat the Steelers, who aren't really that good of a team. They're not that great of a team. And they barely beat the Steelers. Barely edged the Steelers. And again, the Eagles beat the Saints, and the Saints demolished the Cowboys. So at the very least, they should be on the same level as them. But putting the Broncos, the Bears, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Dolphins, I mean, it makes no sense, right? The Eagles are on the same tier as the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have won one game in the last God knows how long, right? And they beat the Colts. Like, wow, congrats on that one. And they almost lost, quite frankly, to Joe Flacco, and the Colts. So it really is comically absurd at this point. I just, yeah, it's It really makes, I mean, it makes sense because I know why it's done, but it technically makes no sense. If the Eagles lose to the Browns, then yeah, then I think that's totally fair that they're at the bottom, obviously. Losing to the Browns outside of Deshaun Watson just suddenly playing like a top quarterback in the NFL, right? If he rewinds the clock and goes back in time, which is technically possible, then outside of that, if it's just like a regular old game and they lose, well, then yeah, that would be Mayday. And outside of them not being fully healthy, I really want to see if AJ Brown, Devontae, Lane Johnson, if they're all for the most part pretty healthy. But so yeah, again, but that's why I also agree with Brou that the hot seat makes sense because Nick Sirianni's seat should be scorching hot. As I've said this in multiple videos, I think Nick Sirianni should be fired, quite frankly. But I also just really think that yeah, it's just it's just funny no matter how you slice it because Nick threw a party the other day for the Saints for the Chiefs beating the Saints. He literally had all his banners, was all excited, had a field day and all that, and yet he says the Saints are this awful team, right? And yet the Saints nearly also beat the Falcons, who he thinks are a pretty decent team, right? They lost to a last-second field goal, and the Saints outplayed the Falcons. They outscored out. I mean, they had more yards, more first downs, more rushing yards, more passing yards. It was more. Everything was better, and they just had a couple turnovers. They just lost a turnover battle, which was unfortunate. So this idea that also that the Saints are just awful, it's because he hates Derek Carr. Now the Saints will probably lose a bunch of games mainly because Derek Carr, I think, is now injured now, and I think he's like genuinely injured. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to. I don't know if he's on IR now or what, but I don't think that the Saints are this awful team. And even if they are, then it makes the Dallas Cowboys, win over them. The Saints win over the Dallas Cowboys. It makes it even worse than that the Dallas Cowboys did that. It means that the Cowboys lost to the Saints, who I guess are a bad team, barely beat the Giants, barely beat the Steelers, and beat up on a terrible Cleveland Browns team. And yet that makes them, NFC playoff like up there. Like it just doesn't make sense. It really, really doesn't. And that's why I keep trying to look at it and be like, how can I make more sense of this? How can I make more sense of it? And it's really there's just no sense to be made, quite frankly. I could understand. Honestly, I would put the Buccaneers above the Cowboys. I'd put the Falcons above the Cowboys. I'm trying to think if there are any other teams. I'd probably put the Cardinals above the Cowboys. The Chargers are tough because they're injured. The Steelers, obviously, they just played each other. I'm sure if they played that game again, the Steelers would win. But I feel like, I don't know, Justin Fields is just, I don't know who Justin Fields is. I'd love to see the Steelers with Russell Wilson, quite frankly. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for this Sunday's game for the Eagles versus the Cleveland Browns because that will be a telling game to see who are the Eagles, where do they stand, are they a hot mess, were they just a few unfortunate situations away and some injuries away from actually being 3-1, 4-0, whatever it may be. That's why playing the Cleveland Browns will be an interesting barometer for the Eagles. I think, again, if Deshaun Watson plays and is continuing to play as poorly as he's been playing, then anything short of not a truly convincing, like, yeah, we are in control, start to finish of this game, anything short of that, I would find concerning. Like, if the Eagles beat the Browns and it's like, by 3 points in the final 2 minutes or whatever, and the Cleveland Browns have a chance to come back, but they stop them or something, like that would be concerning. That would, that would be problematic for the Eagles for sure. Yeah, otherwise a win, anything greater than that, I think would be, perfectly fair. And of course a loss would just be like I said, the only way a loss would even remotely be acceptable is if they have injuries that they already have going into it, but then more injuries throughout the game, as well as like I said, if Watson just is like vintage Watson in the whole broadcast. They're like, oh my God, this is like Deshaun Watson with the Houston Texans. We always knew this was still in him. It just took him a while to get going. Whatever the nonsense they would say in commentating. That would be the only way that it would even remotely make sense. But yeah, this game, it's 1 o'clock game Sunday. And they're favored by 9. So that just shows you how little, because I thought they just had 7.5. I thought is what Brou said or Nick Wright said, but 9. That's the largest that I think I've seen all season. I think before the largest I saw was 7.5, which I think was the 49ers and the Cardinals. So yeah, I'm really definitely really curious about this one for sure. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you agree with Brou that the Eagles should be flying higher? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.